I'm Patrick Norton. Coming up on Twitch, we're going to talk about hacking your car through your tire monitors. Watch out, people. This could get ugly. John Carmack's got Rage running on an iPhone, and you won't believe the frame rate. Well, the Killer 2100 might actually be affordable, and, well, how about a $17,000 digital projector? We're talking about gorgeous home theater coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, episode number 82, recorded August 12th, 2010. Wireless tire hacks. This episode of Twitch is brought to you by GoToAssist Express. If you're in tech support, clients rely on you for fast and reliable service. Help them the fast and easy way with GoToAssist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/Twitch. Welcome to This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton. My usual co-host Ryan Shrout is somewhere in Texas at QuakeCon, possibly buried under a pile of angry hardware. We're hoping he's going to check in later in the show. Stepping up, my buddy from HD Nation, Mr. Robert Heron, the man, the myth, the legend. If you have a home theater PC question or an ACTV question, fire it out, because
do it.
The man knows his stuff. We're going to start off with a story Ryan picked. QuakeCon Rage is coming to the iPhone, running at 60 frames per second. So if you haven't caught up with this story yet, it actually posted this afternoon. Did it post this afternoon? Posted this afternoon. Carmack, right? John Carmack, the man, the myth, the legend behind Quake, behind id, has apparently... well, let me read the article from Joystick. Has somehow, we imagine with the aid of the dark arts, managed to condense its latest game onto the iPhone. So Carmack was speaking at QuakeCon in Dallas and said that id's going to be delivering a version of Rage, quote, replete with mega textures and a 60 frame per second frame rate, unquote, onto the iPhone. Apparently it's running on the iPhone 4, the 3GS, and looks really good on the iPad. And apparently this whole game started as an experiment on the Wii, of all places, and won't have a 4-year dev cycle. They actually expect it to be out this year. Actually, like the iPhone version will be out this year before Rage. So are you feeling excited for a Carmack game?
Hell yeah.
Gonna bring you any closer to an iPhone? I didn't hear any mention of Android. I'm like looking here for, I was kind of hoping they'd have it running on Android too.
Yeah, that has plenty of good hardware. I mean, the CPU in an Android phone is going to be plenty banging for that kind of stuff as well. I'm sure they're doing some GPU acceleration on that. Must be, to get it 60 frames a second on a phone. That's a pretty
crazy idea. Actually, it turns out Carmack says he's still, quote, spot surveying the Android market to determine if it's worth supporting. So possibly an Android version in the next 6 months.
It's also a big benefit that phones don't have that high of resolution to deal with either.
True.
I mean, a handful of pixels compared to what you get on your typical computer monitor. So getting good frame rates. I mean, I'm glad he's focusing on frame rate too, because I'd just be curious to see how well the game controls with either a tilt mechanism or how they plan to really make it playable. I take it this won't be a Twitch type game, but perhaps more like single player adventure style. Maybe, who knows? Maybe some multiplayer.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. Like, apparently it's already running on the Xbox 360 and was out at E3. And, man, it is a gorgeous-looking game. If you get a chance, do a search for Rage on some of the websites out there. It's pretty interesting. It's a first-person shooter, dude.
I'm curious, is he running that through the browser built into the phone like he does with, I want to say, Quake Live actually runs on web browsers now. You can go play online with, a minimal install, really.
My guess is that this one's basically one of the things they mentioned in the article on joystick.com, good website, is that they are taking advantage of the App Store. So I think being able to monetize it and being able to do a full install is critical for that kind of performance. 60 frames per second on a phone would have been inconceivable a year ago.
It all depends on the quality of the graphics too. The more photorealistic you try to make things, the more memory it's going to require to do that usually. So but this is, I mean, from the pictures I'm looking at and the video streaming, on the joystick website. It's definitely not low res as far as the detail goes. So
no, it's interesting.
I can't wait.
The textures actually are pretty fascinating to look at. Second story up: Killer 2100 network card drops $40 and has been picked up by Alienware. So you have been known to be an enthusiastic online gamer, Mr. Heron. Is that a fair judgment?
Very fair, very fair. Have all the right hardware.
Have you ever invested in a gaming specific network card?
Hell no. Please. What's the price on it? Okay, $90 now. That's a better price for a NIC card. A good NIC, it's nice to have one around, but I'd say for the last 5 years minimum, I've been using the ones built into the motherboard very well. I mean, I'm not seeing any kind of CPU overhead. I'm not seeing any kind of degraded performance per se. Local transfers of my own network are all screaming along.
Well, it's I think it's probably, you are not a rabid, psychotic upgrade my graphics card every 3 months kind of gamer either. Because it's really.
But I have a high-end graphics card too, but
it's true.
I don't know. It's just I guess if I were putting together a brand new system and all the other parts were top of the line, I'd at least give it a shot. I mean, if you're blowing, like for 3 or 4 graphics cards in a system, SSD drives, 30-inch screens,
right?
Why not? But
well, I mean, some of the people
not going in my value build, that's for sure.
No,
so.
Not even at $90. But it's interesting. Like the people who benchmark it are basically saying it actually does lower your latency. It does improve your UDP throughput. Yeah, I gotta say, okay, I do have an SSD drive, but I'm definitely upgrading my graphics card before I go anywhere near a $90 NIC.
Totally, you get a lot more bang for your buck, I think, going that way. Although you spent $400 on my last graphics card, so I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan jumps in here at 6:30 and tells us we're both fools for not upgrading to the latest in network topology technology for the acceleration of UDP and the minimization. I see $90 is like 2 months of my high-speed internet service, so that's the other thing too. I'd rather have the high-speed internet connection to begin with than worry about minuscule. I don't know.
Is internet
negligible performance gains?
I don't know, man.
But maybe Ryan's got a take on it. We'll see.
Is internet that much cheaper in San Leandro than it is in Alameda? Just to sort of alienate everyone in the audience who doesn't live in the East Bay right now.
No, I have the bundle where you get it with TV and the internet. They knock $10 off the whole deal for you. So
yeah, I refuse to touch the phone or the internet, which made the full price the only option. Oh my goodness.
It's good, but it's not cheap, unfortunately. It should be, but it's not.
Oh, before we cut to a quick commercial. Has the Ceton tuner arrived?
No! And I'm pinging Canon right now. I bought mine through Canon PC, and there's like three distributors for the product. So I haven't talked to anybody who actually has it in their hands. I heard some people have gotten confirmations from the shippers saying that the product's moving along and it has reached them, and they're distributing it at that point. But I haven't talked to anybody yet who actually has it in their hands. So
for folks who aren't familiar, the card is essentially a PCI Express board, loads a single cable card, and allows you to record up to 4 HD programs simultaneously.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I am so waiting on that.
How long have you been waiting on that?
Hardware's ready. You know what? I'll tell you in about a second here. Let me just check my email. It's like Canon PC.
You ordered this thing months ago, and it's been delayed
pre-ordered
so far?
Order received back in, it wasn't that long ago, April. So
it seemed like a long time ago.
It does.
I don't know. I can't wait for you to hold
before summer started, and here school's about to begin. So it's dragging on.
The only person who's actually touched one is Ben Draba over at Engadget HD.
He had to give his back.
Oh, because he was
sad.
Excited. Because basically he could record like every football game on a Sunday afternoon running simultaneously.
I'm just looking at it really as an alternative or like a DIY TiVo. With no monthly service charges, really, and quad tuner performance.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like being able to record 4 things at once is for most DVRs is essentially having 2 DVRs and an extra dish or an extra cable access stacked up. So
I mean, my DVR can do combos of things like a couple of cable signals and I think 1 over-the-air signal simultaneously. But you know what? It'd be nice just to. Most of my content comes over my cable connection, so it'd be nice to have a tuner that can just do 4 streams of high def at once.
That would be
I'll
nice.
I'll be curious to see how the storage. I'm curious to see if I can handle the streams over my network and save them onto my NAS directly. That'll be my first big test.
We're going to be
whether or not I
upgrading
need local storage.
We're going to have to upgrade your home network to optical fiber.
Not even that. Well, I've got gigabit everywhere, but it's more about just, is the NAS fast enough? Is it should be. If I can stream a Blu-ray movie at 40 megabit
It's going
to my living room,
it's going to be an
should able to.
expensive September
other
for
way
you.
around.
I can smell that one coming.
It's gonna be crazy. I need bigger hard drives. I need more hard drives already. That's my problem. Storage is just never enough.
2 terabytes are down to like 125, 130 bucks on sale. 1.5
good.
terabytes are well under $100. I've seen them on sale for as little as 70 bucks. I'm holding
I'm gonna
out
have
for 3 terabytes.
I'm gonna end up building a box full of hard drives. That's really what it's gonna come down to. I just I need something that holds like a minimum of 6 drives, and looking around online for products in that category, it's like, I think the least expensive one's around $1,500 if you try to buy something that's pre-built like that. So
It's all about the free NAS and the Unraid. I sense a build coming up on HD Nation. Hey,
there you go.
take a moment to thank our sponsor today. Ladies and gentlemen, this episode is brought to you by Go to Assist Express. If you're in tech support, you know the nightmare. Traveling to the client's house on a Saturday to find out the cup holder's broken, and that's the reason the computer won't start, right? Everybody's got a nightmare about traveling to get to a client, or the fact that it's expensive, or the fact that, you know what, if you have to travel from point A to point B, then back to point A, then to point C for the next client, then back to point A, you're wasting a lot of time. You can avoid that, right? Simply by running Go to Assist Express. Look, especially when you're dealing with the phone, it can take a long time to identify what the problem is, what's going on. You play the Q&A game. Probably your client doesn't know how to describe what's going on. And then you have to solve the problem once you figured out what it is, and you spend a lot of time on the phone with the Google, wasting time when possibly a few seconds inside your client's machine, take care of everything. This is where Go to Assist Express comes in quite handy. It's pretty much the easiest way to view and control another computer remotely, and it's affordable. It's cheap. You can see and solve the problem without being there in person. You can do it fast. None of the Q&A game, none of the figuring out what's going on. You get to see it firsthand, and you can help a customer even when they're away from their computer. You don't have to wait for them to log you in and set things up and look over your shoulder because they're worried about what you're browsing in there and whether or not you're looking at the naughty pictures. Basically, you get in, you do your stuff, you get out, and that's kind of nice. Get into the computer, control it, solve the problem the way you know best. Want to try it out, people? You probably should. Go to Assist Express is free for 30 days. Check out gotoassist.com/night, gotoassist.com/windows. Or if I actually read the right one that benefits this show and brings us in advertising revenue, gotoassist.com/twitch. Which is proof that I can read a script, even if I can't read the part of the script that's important to us. It's pretty. Have you ever used Go to Assist?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that for the
also, I've had it used with online meetings with companies as well, where they want to do a presentation with a group of people, and they'd rather you just dial in.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real easy browser plugin that I was using too. So
I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like, one click, it starts. You can share your screen and go into somebody's desktop remotely. If you haven't used remote desktop tools, it's really cool to have them running on your computer at home, so you can basically clock into it from anywhere. It's another big plus. So go to Assist Express. Go to Assist, brought to you by Citrix. And do us a favor, if you enjoy This Week in Computer Hardware, please support us by taking a look at gotoassist.com/twitch, TWICH. Dude, 60 frames per second for a freaking Carmack game on an iPhone.
I expect no less.
That's pretty wild. I think the weirdest story, Ryan pulled up 3 stories for us to talk about today while he is, again, buried under hardware somewhere in Dallas at QuakeCon. Have you heard this story? Because this one it's been out for a few days, but I hadn't seen it until he forwarded this around. Quote, and it's a pretty solid source reporting here, ArsTechnica.com, cars hacked through wireless tire sensors.
Ooh. I thought that was like, I'd imagine it is an encoded chip that's in the wheel. I've never actually I've never seen the tire removed and looked at the actual sensor.
It depends on the configuration, right? It's either inside the wheel, If it's a OEM, it's pretty much inside the wheel, under the valve core stem, or inside on the wheel itself. Aftermarket ones, sometimes they're inside the wheel. More often than not, you actually find them kind of screwed onto the valve cap. But what's interesting, right, is they've pretty much the Firestone incidents with the Fords and the flipping and the mayhem and the replacements. So since 2008, they've been compulsory on pretty much every automobile in the United States. And our second is reporting that earlier this year, researchers from the University of Washington and UC San Diego proved that the ECU, right, the electronic control unit that controls all the function of an automobile, which is basically what the tire pressure monitors, the TPM system is reporting to, could be hacked wirelessly.
That kind of makes sense in a way. Well, the article also mentions that the pressure sensors have unique IDs. So that was the one thing that kind of piqued my attention. The last time I drove a Corvette not too long ago, late model one, and one of the wheels was actually low, and that sensor popped up, and I thought it was the best thing in the world. Well, hey, my left rear tire is down. Let's go put some air in that and make everything safe so I can go 100 miles an hour. But but if it's a unique ID, they mentioned it seems like, what would I want to do with that kind of info? Well, you could track somebody if you could, as a car drives through a sensor or something like that. Or, as more annoyingly, they could just trigger false alarms, which would have the whole dashboard lighting up. It's like, oh, all four wheels are, out of air or something. I'd be curious to know if there's a code that could be passed, if there's any particular response from that pressure sensor that would trigger something bad, other than it just saying a message on the dashboard. I could care less about a message on the dashboard. That's not going to turn the engine off. It's not going to, dial out on a cell modem or something like that. But I'm curious. I'm curious if there is extra code there that maybe isn't used but could be activated through, sending the right commands.
Well, it's pretty. I mean, it's pretty. Basically, what's funny is, right, you mentioned that the tire pressure sensors actually contain unique IDs, but you can eavesdrop and basically pick up the IDs to hack into there. And they basically said they were able, like, $1,500 for the hardware. I assume there's like a software radio kit involved, because there's a lot of DEF CON. There's a lot of stuff going on around people using software-defined radios to do some really interesting hacks. But apparently, like earlier in the year, they proved that the ECU can be hacked. And what is a little fuzzy in this is whether or not the hacks they figured out earlier this year can be deployed through the tire pressure monitors, because stuff they were doing earlier this year was like turning on the wipers, honking the horn, or actually disabling the brakes or jamming the accelerator, which I assume is like a fly-by-wire system, right?
That's my worst nightmare right there, then.
Yeah, apparently quote, the new research shows other systems and vehicles are similarly insecure. And they basically eavesdropped, picked up the signal, and apparently could do it while the cars were moving. So, okay, so it looks like the TPM attack's more of a nuisance than any real danger. So the tire sensors only send a message every 60 to 90 seconds, quote, giving attackers little opportunity to compromise systems or cause any real damage. So
still, though, there should be no code there between the sensor and the wheel and the rest of the car that could cause anything bad. I mean, it should just simply report something. At worst, it'll put something up on the dashboard. But, man, there should be very limited access in terms of other things it could do. You would think when they code this stuff up, it's like, you know what, don't go crazy with extra features that we'll never use or could possibly make it insecure.
Well, but
keep it simple.
I mean, the other thing is, right, you're an automotive engineer, you're designing a closed system that's defined within, you know what I mean? It's under the hood, it's under the dashboard. It's not like people expect, some dastardly hacker is going to go in and disable the brakes on this. Oh, well.
Now we need some kind of like burst data technology with rotating keys and, I don't know.
That's a
protect my tires. Considering how much you pay for those wheels, man, please. I put about $1,500 on each wheel if you count the wheel and the tire, and it's like, come on, man, get that stuff right.
I don't know. I'm actually looking at a system to deploy on my truck when I'm towing the Airstream. That'll have like all four wheels on the Airstream and all four wheels on the truck, because flat tires suck when you're towing 7,000 pounds.
Yeah, they do.
Mr. Heron, Xbox 360 or PS3?
I'm a PS3 owner, but I would say they're both great systems. The new Xbox is really what I've kind of been waiting for. That new design, and You really can't go wrong either way. I honestly, though, if I had to tell somebody to go buy a console and they didn't know which one to buy, I'd probably point them more towards the Xbox.
Right.
Especially with the new console hardware and just the amount of games and the online experience. I think boom, boom, boom. They have some really, really strong presence right there.
I got to say, I really like the design of the interface on the Xbox. Although I finally kind of caught up to speed on the PS3 after 2 years with a Sony Blu-ray player, or a year and a half with a Sony Blu-ray player. But it turns out July, the revision of the Xbox 360. First time in 3 years, according to the MPD group, the Xbox 360 topped all consoles in sales. 443,500 units during the month.
It beat the Wii, finally. Or probably, I wonder if they count the DS. I think the DS is the #1 seller of all time, but unbelievable.
Xbox 360 was well ahead of the Nintendo's Wii, which sold 253,900 units, and the PlayStation 3, which at 214,500 units sold less as half as well as the Microsoft console. Brace yourself. Nintendo DS continues to sell well, says PC World. 398,400 units in July. The Sony PlayStation Portable, 84,000 units. And the best-selling game of the month, NCAA Football 11.
Yep.
It looks
and
like
Madden not soon after. Madden 11, I think, comes out very soon if it's not out already. So
yeah. Apparently, the PlayStation 3 version of NCAA Football 11 was the second highest-selling game, like 300,000 units.
Oh, good to know. My PS3 is one of my primary Blu-ray players as far as, just rock solid, always works. Actually, I had a disc the other day I ran into just for Blu-ray playback on a kind of an off-topic, but it had a defect in the disc. It wasn't a scratch or anything. There was actually a defect on a disc I picked up, and every LG drive I put this disc into would just fail, be it a standalone player or a computer. But when I threw it in, tried 3 different drives, and when I threw it into the PS3, it hit the same point on the disc, had a hiccup, but rolled past the error, and I was like, oh. Anecdotal evidence for PS3 being a pretty decent Blu-ray player.
Oh, my goodness. Flash updates. Are you enjoying
Always.
Flash getting hardware acceleration?
Heck yeah, man! That's what makes my Atom Ion-based home theater PC actually usable. Is the fact that just about everything I look at is accelerated, and if it weren't, I don't think the CPU is really strong enough, and even in the overclocked state I have it right now, to handle a lot of the content I want to look at. Let alone like, Blu-ray decoding and other things. Although I think that's probably pretty well optimized by the third-party software I'm using in terms of their playback, but. Everything. Where's Silverlight's hardware acceleration? There's really what I'm kind of waiting on. I know.
What website actually uses Silverlight to distribute video? Brace yourselves, people. I'm about to be schooled, by the way.
Netflix.
I should know that. As much time as I spend on Netflix.
Netflix is the big one I always think about, especially with their new high def. When they launched the majority of their high def content, it was also kind of a premiere too for their Silverlight technology. How they're integrating it on their site, and because remember we were doing that demo on HD Nation where we were trying to show off playback of that on an HTPC, on my HTPC, and I think we were showing a Lost episode in HD, and it was kind of a stuttering mess for the most part. And we got some scenes that started to go okay, but it wasn't nearly as smooth as the Flash content I look at on a variety of different websites, like my beloved Comedy Central. I happen to just love them as a video portal site, and the overall quality versus the streaming versus how it looks on a big screen HD TV. I think they're doing. As far as some of the broadcast sites out there, they're one of the better ones I look at.
It's amazing to realize. I don't know. It's kind of crazy and amazing to realize just how much of my life has just been defined in the last 2 years by listening to fans whir while trying to deal with decoding video encoded in Flash.
Really?
So, I don't know.
A lot of problems?
Part of the reason I bring this up is because there's actually the latest Flash update apparently finally brings hardware acceleration to the Mac platform. So either I was the only person who was not aware of that, or it's a relatively recent update. 10.1.82.76.
Nice. So, they got the 10.1 code rolling finally.
Yeah. Well, it's still a beta version of Flash 10.1 player, but...
This has been a good year for Mac. Between that and Steam, the video game online distribution software, and arguably one of my favorite pieces of software to run on a PC, bringing decent games to the Mac finally, and having a a platform. Although it's not quite as filled out yet as you have on the PC side of things, but at least it's there and it's growing by leaps and bounds on a monthly basis. So it's always good news.
Yeah, anything that makes Flash run better makes me happy, especially 1080p. Yeah. So, do you want to? Let's see. We have a dog pile of questions from Twitter. You feel like answering a few questions?
Of course. Okay. I'd love to. I would love to.
All right. I'm going to be pulling these together as we roll along. I get a softball one for you.
Excellent.
Schmid Tech. I have a DLP projector. How will I know when I need a new bulb for it? This is a good EC Nation question.
When you see no picture, or you see a discoloration, or sometimes you can get pretty odd behavior. I've seen Lloyd Case, ex-Extreme Tech editor, and I believe he's a good freelancer, and he's over at improbableinsights.com. He actually had a TV one time where the bulb hadn't completely gone, but it was causing an electrical issue that was causing distortions on the screen that you wouldn't think was caused by the bulb, but when we swapped the bulb out, everything went back to beautiful, and it was really one of the odder things I've seen in TVs. But if you're dealing with projector on a regular basis, I guarantee you that bulb will go out at the worst possible moment when you've got company and family sitting around, and you go to hit the button and pop, and it just goes. So it's a couple $100 or maybe a little bit more you'll have to lay out to have a spare bulb around. But I think it's good to buy a quality replacement bulb, just to keep on hand especially if you intend to keep this product for a while. Just so you don't have to go through one of those clutch moments where you're like, oh man, I need this to work, and it is not. So, but basically the characteristic signs of a bulb going or starting to age, over time the bulbs will get dimmer. Over time, you may develop some odd coloring on the screen itself, but usually they tend to go all at once. Or if it's going to last a long time, you'll see it slowly. Although it's kind of unnoticeable to watch brightness decrease slowly over time. You almost have to see it. How did it look 6 months ago compared to today, rather than day by day? But the best suggestion I can ask is just keep that spare bulb handy, just in case.
Is it $200 still pretty typical for a bulb for a projector these days?
It depends. The lamp modules. Sometimes you can buy just the bulb itself. Sometimes you have to buy the whole module, depending on which way you want to. Depending on how the manufacturer is about it. They're all over the map, and the more high-end the projector or the projection system, the more expensive the bulbs become, because it's the quality of the light source. The more full spectrum it is, usually you get better color and other characteristics out of the picture. So on the highest end projectors, that would be a good question. We were recently looking at a $15,000 projector from digital projection. Yeah, and the one question I didn't ask them was how much was the bulb replacement on that, because that was probably. Oh no, it's a lamp. Oh, it's an LED.
It's LED.
Never mind.
But it's an LED. That's the whole point of the review. It's the LED with the beautiful saturated colors.
That was it. But on other lamp systems, like Xeon lamps in particular, the high-end lamps, I've seen some of those go for $2,000 to $4,000, and it's just a percentage of that. And people wonder, why is this projector $20,000? And it's like, well, it's got a $4,000 bulb in it, putting out 4 kilowatts of light. And it's like, okay, maybe that makes a little more sense now.
Insanely bright LEDs are. Oops, sorry.
Oh no.
I was saying insanely bright LEDs are still pricey.
Yeah, and they're not as bright as you think they would be too. You think they'd have some really bright LEDs out there by now, as far as projection or just light systems go. I know you can buy flashlights that have a single bulb that are pretty bright, but they're not replacing car headlamps yet with those things, and they're not replacing. A single LED is not replacing anything in a projection system yet, except for the ones you have in a cell phone. Ultra small, ultra low light output.
If you put 30 to 3 watt lights together, you can some pretty awesome medium range lighting for an off-road vehicle. People are doing a lot of that. But
really?
Yeah, they're super expensive, but yeah, they're kind of like the super bright LEDs they use for Surefire high-end flashlights. I know there's a big crossover between the Twitch audience and people who buy expensive flashlights.
I'm a flashlight whore, man. I love a bright light. I keep looking at this one $170 Surefire that has a 200 lumen output mode on it, and I'm like, okay, it only lasts for 30 minutes, but damn, that's a bright light.
The trick with that one is to never ever shine it into a mirror or inside a car while you're inside of it.
No, I just picked up a 4D cell mag light. It's LED based, and the only one brighter is their 6-cell version that has, I forget, they have like 2 different bulb versions, but Mag does have a pretty darn bright one if you can go up to the 6-cell monster. Basically an aluminum club of a flashlight, but darn handy. I love those things.
I like that thoughts. We got a question here from LVDJ Garcia. He asks, the new iMacs offer a dual drive option with an SSD opinion. I'm a huge fan of, I have not priced out the SSD options on the new iMacs. I'm a huge fan of, I have basically an Intel X25M storing the operating system and the main applications for my super cool guy high-end gaming rig, which I figured out last week after talking to Lloyd Case about graphics cards, or for this week's Techzilla, and talking to Ryan last week about the whole dual 460 performance situation. But basically, like, everybody heard it last week, 2 460s and SLI are stomping on a single 480 and costing less money. So,
excellent.
Yeah, well, the SSD drive is fantastic because it's fast. It starts the machine up ridiculously fast. And, okay, so the capacity isn't very small, which is why they do dual drives. You do a small SSD drive for your operating system, your primary applications, maybe your scratch disk, and then the second drive is for all of your data, especially your video files, your audio files, pretty much everything where you need to store a lot of stuff where it's read-only and performance maybe isn't as critical as that primary disk. So I got to say, if it's not unbearably expensive, I would go for it. If it is unbearably expensive, I would price an SSD drive out from Intel or OCZ or one of the other major manufacturers and think about adding that drive in yourself. Are you running an SSD drive at home, Robert?
No, I am. It's on the top of my purchase list coming up. I've been kind of waiting to go through the first couple generations, get a few of the bugs worked out. Windows 7 came out with trim support. I'm mostly a Windows user at this point, so with all those things aligning, I think I'm really in the market now for an SSD. One for my standalone workstation / gaming rig, and 2, I'd like to put one in my home theater PC because I think one of its choke points really is just pulling data off of its relatively slow notebook style hard drive that I'm using right now. Although most of the data, I don't really have a lot of data stored on my home theater PC. It's mostly kept on the NAS and my local network storage, and I just pull stuff there. So I really don't need a lot of storage space, but that extra performance would help make that relatively weak CPU GPU combo feel a little snappier. Yeah, that's something I'm really looking for. And everything is going to go this way in terms of desktop storage and consumer storage at some point when the prices get right. But but until that point, I understand people's hesitation on spending the money. I've never actually owned or purchased a brand new Mac computer, Apple computer, and do they usually include the operating system on disk?
Yes.
When you
see, the last one I bought, they did.
Okay, because that would be great then. Because then maybe you could just buy the one without the SSD, pick up an SSD down the road, and do a nice clean install with it. That'd be my only thing about just pulling it out and trying to ghost that image onto the SSD. You might not trigger certain steps within the operating system if it needed to realize it is an SSD. I'm sure that somebody's written an article about that. It's probably not that difficult to do, but
check it at Antech.com, and that knows everything about SSDs. The part of what's been yeah, well, I got to say, though, if you haven't bought one, holding out until Q4 this year, the holiday shopping season might be a really good idea because everything I've read, everybody I talked to says that they're ramping up capacity, they're ramping up basically the density, the areal density on the chips, and that we can expect literally probably a 50% reduction in price or a doubling in capacity for the same amount of money compared to where we were in around CES January, February of this year. So I'm kind of hoping that's true. So I wouldn't mind updating my wife's notebook with an SSD, get some more performance out of that thing before it finally kicks the bucket. But yeah, SSDs, I like graphics cards, like computer chips, like cars. The longer you wait, the more performance you get for less money. Which is always painful.
It is always that way. You know what? I should turn on some more light here. I just realized maybe my camera isn't the best in the room I'm at. So I'll hit my lamp here in a second. It's bright to me, but no. Apparently not bright enough.
Hey, man, have you seen the new specs on the Xeno HD 410?
What is a Xeno HD 410?
Remember the Xeno HD? It's the little box from Dell that we had in. It's a small desktop-sized computer.
AMD-based home theater PC.
it's pretty interesting. The classic support document leak up somewhere in Dell.com. Somebody forwarded this over to the Engadget crew. Basically, I happen to like it. I thought it was a nice start for home theater PC. And it's interesting. They're talking about a new one. It's apparently is available overseas and should show up in the United States. Like dual external eSATA ports, HDMI, although I got to say I'd rather see USB 3.0, gigabit Ethernet, and what's really cool for a home theater PC is an optical SPDIF socket that'll do 7.1 surround sound. So having that built into the motherboard is pretty cool. But along with that optical SPDIF socket, Radeon HD 4250 graphics by default, which should be more than enough to accelerate Blu-ray, and mobile Radeon 5450 GPU as an alternate, 8 gigabytes of RAM, DDR3 Max, and a Blu-ray drive option, which I think is awesome because obviously I'm into the Blu-ray. But yeah, Phenom 2 quad-core processors are supported by the chipset in there, which means it sounds like they may actually offer a pretty high-performance version of this box, right? Because if you can do a Phenom 2 quad-core processor, 8 gigabytes of DDR3 memory, 1066 DDR3 memory, that's a pretty high-performance system for desktop use, and it's probably almost overkill for a home theater PC.
I agree. Probably too much RAM. I mean, you probably won't use anywhere near all of it, but it sounds nice to have.
I mean, for Windows Media Center. Are you still Total Media Extreme? Is still that? That's pretty much what I'm using for Blu-ray playback on the home theater PC.
Yeah, still Total Media Theater 3. I think it's called. Yeah, I am. The only thing I've been investigating on their forums is I'm having an issue with their SimHD upconversion stuff for DVD video. It looks good when I upconvert some older DVDs that are a little soft looking, and it adds a nice little sharpness enhancement to stuff, but I'm having an audio sync issue with it that makes it unusable, so I end up using my outboard video processor to make it all look a little better, to my eyes at least. But other than that software's been pretty flawless for me, and they've been putting out regular updates to it, and I have to say, when you first launch the software, it gives you a little window in the corner that tells you when an update's available. Nice. And I love that. And it just one click, it downloads the file, installs it, kind of takes care of itself. And if it could be automatic in terms of its updates, I'd love that option. But overall, I've had no complaints with that software. In terms of compatibility, it supports a laundry list of files too, as it probably should as a media player. But for Blu-ray playback, it works just dandy, and it integrates very nicely into Windows Media Center.
Cool.
Yeah.
That was for the JRB, by the way, who tweeted in that one. Oh boy, Weenie Wawa. That is a powerful name to be using on the Twitter. What's a good setup for running a Linux firewall like Smoothwall or Indian? Just had an AMD Sempron system die, and I need a new one. I'm torn between, like my classic answer is whatever other cheap, low power box that's 5 years old that's sitting around your place that you can still buy gigabit Ethernet cards for. The smart answer, I think, though, is to look for like an Atom-powered system, something that's low power and efficient. If you have a notebook that has gigabit Ethernet, or if you only need 100 base T, I like notebooks to recycle for routers because they normally don't consume a lot of power. Atom-based processors. What you think stand out to mind? Like the Zotac boards are pretty nice.
I am a big fan. My experience with those boards was phenomenal, and just in terms of build quality and ease of assembly. Many ITX motherboards in general, I've become a big fan of. I don't need, like for my workstation, I have like 12 gigs of RAM in the thing. It's got a couple of hard drives, optical drives, all this stuff. But if you only need one PCI Express slot, a couple of memory slots, and options for whatever CPU you want, there's a micro or mini ITX motherboard out there with your name on it, and from everyone from Intel on down to Zotac to and everyone in between. There's a few good manufacturers out there to choose from. And you don't have to, like in my case, I have kind of a fixed CPU on my motherboard for that Zotac board I picked up, but they also sell socketed boards, so you can go and pick and choose an inexpensive part for it and upgrade down the road if you want to. And once you do an assembly of a micro ATX board over a full-sized ITX board, and it's just like, wow, okay, 4 screws, really easy, generally smaller systems, and I've got my mini ITX board pretty well loaded up with gear on it, and I'm still consuming under 60 watts, and I think I could probably lower it a little bit further by just taking out some of the gear I'm not using in it.
Yeah, it's been like pretty much in my experience, anything faster than 100 megahertz Pentium processor should be able to run it. So
I try to get something maybe with ATI or NVIDIA graphics, because I know in the Linux community those are fairly well supported graphics chipsets. My only concern really would be just driver support and making sure that everything you're using is going to be, you're not going to have to struggle to get it to work. That'd be my first concern.
Some people are also listing like VF C3, C7 chips, AMD Geo, and if you could find an older N270 board that somebody's gotten rid of, or even in a notebook, if it's got, problem is you need multiple ports, multiple Ethernet ports, and that could probably be problematic on the notebook front.
Is there any way to run something like that on a router? I don't know.
Well, we could go to another question related to that. Caveman Jim, what router can run DDWRT, quality of service QoS, and give me my 24 megabit per second interwebs? My WRT54G can only give me 12 megabits per second with QoS on, 24 without. Man, I gave up on DDWRT because it was, I was moving to 802.11n routers, and they were so fast and so well set up. I no longer felt the powerful need to run DDWRT. If I can get the chat rooms on, I'm sure there's going to be a flurry of people making suggestions. But yeah, the DDWRT community will pretty much tell you everything. And I would ask them politely what they think is the fastest router out there. If you've never been there, it's dd-wrt.com. Check routers. Yeah, router database is up there. And off to the supported device list. Devices with 8 megabytes or more flash. Man, I'm looking for something new, and I may just be Cisco Linksys. The new stuff is apparently supported.
Interesting. Does he just need QoS support for?
He wants QoS, but he wants 24 megabits per second, because in DDWRT, if you aren't familiar, by the way, with DDWRT, it's an open source operating system. Basically, it's a version of Linux. It's been customized to run on home routers. So instead of, say, running the Linksys software that came with the WRT54G or the later Linux versions that I think you can still find if you shop carefully. It's a customized operating system. It's fantastic. It's sophisticated. There's a lot of powerful options. But what some people are running into is some of the crazy streaming the kids are trying to do these days. It cannot support. But yeah, he said these QoS. And I also might wonder if you might want to experiment, Caveman Jim, with the QoS settings you're using and whether or not you have deprioritized either your video traffic or your internet traffic. And also do like a test other than a speed test, because you might find out, that'd be interesting to see, because I don't know off the top of my head if the QoS and DDWRT would automatically slow a download test like that. Oh, wow, that's an interesting question.
I just find that speed test, when I use it, it doesn't last long enough to start throttling back, because it usually just shows me the burst performance of my connection, which is usually looks always great, but it's not realistic in terms of what I'm actually getting in terms of throughput.
Well, does it slow down 30% after the initial speed boost, Mr. and Mrs. Comcast?
Not for me. I mean, when I'm doing a standard download, it peaks upward of 21, 22 megabit, and then it ratchets back down to the standard about 12 that I pay for. And the absolute throughput, it's their power boost, or basically the burst technologies, but which I appreciate. I appreciate the extra little bits, but per second faster for that initial, push. But still, I'm using a D-Link router that supports QoS they claim it supports for wired and wireless traffic, enhances gaming and phone calling, or basically VoIP, and video streaming. I've left it all on automatic, and I've never had to mess with it, so I've never tried to deal with it in terms of traffic in a heavy user environment. But for my own stuff and around the house with multiple systems off of it, it works pretty well. But I think this person's looking for something a little more customizable, maybe on a per user basis. My router probably supports that too. I just haven't dug into it enough, other than updating firmware.
Yeah, it's always amazing to realize what you can find in your router if you spend long enough poking through the corners of it. Another home theater question, or in this case, an actual HD question. BP Newman, Mr. Heron, True Motion, 120 hertz makes movies look like plastic crap? Question mark. Can I turn it off? Question mark. Sorry if it's a stupid question. I just hooked it up. It's not a stupid question at all, dude.
Not at all. That's been the bane of, I think, home theater this year. As more people buy the TVs that support the increased refresh rates that are available, either 120 or 240 hertz that are out there, is dealing with basically the default setting adds interpolation to the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're dealing with low frame rate material, particularly film, that's at 24 frames per second, to match that to the TV's absolute refresh rate, a couple ways you can do it. Either you can repeat that same frame of the 24 frames. You just repeat them over and over until you get to the multiple you need. Like for, say, 120 hertz, you're multiplying by 5.
Right.
And you just repeat each frame 5 times. Or the computers inside can manipulate the imagery, say, here's frame A, here's the next frame. What would go in between that? And it'll generate a virtual frame in between. That's the kind of the halfway point between everything, and it adds that smoothing. And what that smoothing can do is actually improve basically the visual clarity of the picture in certain cases, but it can also add that annoying to most people's eyes smoothing effect that makes your film look like a camcorder video. And it's really what you try to. Yes, the short answer is, I'm sorry. Yes, you could turn that off on any TV made in 2010 for sure. And every TV I've looked at in the last, I'd say, 2 years has an ability to do it. It may not be labeled anything resembling, a clear, concise here, standard repeat mode versus interpolation mode. Samsung, just to name an example, they actually for 2010 have added a pretty nice set of sliders, one for each function. Rather, how much do you want it to add new frames or not, as well as generally the smoothing effect. You want to increase or decrease that, and you can adjust those independently. And it was it's nice to be able to do. But yes, those settings are there. It's different for every manufacturer, and you just have to grab the manual and try it out. By turning these functions off, you are not suddenly turning your 120 or 240 hertz TV into a 60 hertz standard display. No, it just simply will make it into a frame repeat mode when necessary. So your 60 hertz stuff is getting a 2x boost or a 4x boost, and your 24p stuff is just getting standard repeats to fill it in for whatever the refresh rate is for that screen.
And I should point out that as much as I despise watching movies with true motion or other motion smoothing or interpolation effects turned on, for sports or anything that was actually shot digitally for HD TV, it can actually look fantastic.
Totally. And even for Planet Earth was one great example I'd always pull out. There's a few scenes where they do these epic panning shots that really can look stuttering and stilted on a standard TV, but man, when you can add a little bit of smoothing to it, suddenly it's like, wow, you're pulling details out of that picture that you really just didn't see before. And because it's more documentary than say, feature-length cinema, I think it's more acceptable in those environments. But yeah, totally for film, that film look, once you see it taken away and replaced by something that's fairly artificial looking or just camcorder looking, you really then realize, okay, there is a look to film that should be preserved. And there's an appeal to it in terms of how we see pictures, really, I think, for a lot of people.
Oh, my goodness. I'm going to check one last...
But you know what we were talking about in the last episode we recorded for HD Nation? We're going to start going through every TV we get our hands on just to show people, okay, if you have this particular model, maybe an LG or a Panasonic or Samsung or a Sony, here's how you disable that. Or at least try it and see if you want to keep it that way. Or where a happy medium might be, where you have a little bit of it, but not too aggressive in terms of the interpolation versus frame repeat.
It's kind of funny because graphics cards, despite having two of the most hot, contested, angry competitors in the history of technology, and maybe it's just because maybe I'm in denial right now, but it seems like they kind of accepted, or maybe the 3D game creators actually sort of force them both to use the same standard set of language for the 3D effects and processing what you control on the card. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I don't really think of like going in from AMD's control panel to NVIDIA's control panel and being like, where's that anti-aliasing? What do they call that? The overbore line straightener 4000, right?
Totally.
And it is one of the most frustrating. This is something like that.
I will say though. Remember, we were trying to find the overscan setting in the ATI control panel a couple months ago, and it was pretty well hidden. I will admit.
But we knew what it was named.
we knew it was there. We just couldn't find it. So
yeah, well, but at least you're not looking around going like, what's the brand name of the smoothing from this manufacturer or that manufacturer or the other manufacturer?
You don't get any of that with at least the drivers in video PC video hardware right now. I'm not sure if any of the software players out there are doing anything like that, but you would need a monitor capable of going 120 hertz anyway. And the only ones I know that are doing that as far as LCDs are the new 3D monitors that are coming out. 3D capable monitors, and honestly, I wouldn't even run it in 3D mode. I just want 120 hertz monitor, period, just for general smoothness of the picture on my screen. That's also on my wish list of things I want to pick up soon.
Oh my goodness! One last question before we go. At Stratford T, can you recommend a good USB extension hub? You know, if Belkin still makes one, that would be a brand name. I've been using them in keyboards and monitors and whatever I pick up for $10 at my local computer store. A question so terrible, I drove Robert away from the Skype camera.
You did not. I was actually looking at my USB hub to see who makes it, and I'm like, I want to say it's Vantech. Like you said, I went to my local. Let me get back on camera. I went to my local shop, and I was like, hey, I need basically a powered USB hub because I broke one of the 2 USB ports on an old notebook, and I was like, okay, I'm down to 1, and I need to connect multiple devices to this, and just the only thing it had to have was it had to be powered so it can handle any powered devices that I was connecting to it, or unpowered devices that required extra USB power. So I didn't spend a lot on it either. It was like $10 or $15, and I've had absolutely no problems with it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, Belkin still makes USB hubs.
They make great hardware,
and they make some aesthetically quite pleasing USB hubs.
They make some good power strips too. I just picked one up that I'm in love with right now. It has like rotating. Each plug can rotate, so if you have multiple wall warts, they'll all fit on this thing really nicely. And
it's like there's like a barrel where they all rotate.
Yes, that one.
Somebody in the office has one of those, and I've been coveting it, actually.
It does. That's where I saw it. Then I went on Amazon and picked one up. It was like $18 or something. I was like, okay, this solved a lot of my problems.
It's a good thing. Yeah,
out in the field.
I got to admit, like, I use USB hubs built into the monitors. I don't think I've paid more than like $9 or $10 for one in the last few years because I'm in a computer store. I'm up on Newegg. I'm sure. Okay, here we go. The classic Newegg Roseville, which is the house brand for Newegg, right? Roseville USB hub. Do they have one? They do.
Sure.
USB 2.0 7-port shining standing hub with power adapter, $19.99. 62 reviews, 4 stars. The Roseville RHUB 310 USB 2.0 7-port standing hub with power adapter, $19.99. 133 4-star reviews.
It's a hub.
Yeah, you want a 4-port hub, $7. Yeah. Ooh, how about a 10-port high-speed USB 2.0 hub?
Yeah, I don't know. USB 3 now, that'd be the only thing I might think about. If I had a really new system that had that built in, I'd probably want to get something. But I don't have any USB 3 devices yet. So
I bought, actually, Ryan, who's the...
Actually, I think, doesn't USB 3 also improve performance with USB 2 as well? So there might be some benefits. Just, I would consider that. That'd be one of the few considerations I'd throw out there is like if you have USB 3 built into the computer, you might want to consider an adapter or a hub that's compatible with that so you don't lose performance if it's important to you.
Well, Stratford T was actually looking for a USB hub, but I got to say, Ryan actually convinced me to buy a USB 3.0 board for my system. I'm not seeing any improvement in USB 2.0. I may not be measuring it properly or paying attention, but I got to say USB 3.0 to a USB 3.0 adapter in your system to a USB 3.0 drive band, basically bought another like brand I've never heard of from Central Computer. Are we cheap when it comes to like non-graphics card and HDTVs?
Why spend more than you have to? I mean, the hub I picked up, the thing is made of steel. It's built like a little tank.
Yeah,
it's been sitting on my desk functioning flawlessly for years, and I'm like, you know what? I'll spend as much as I have to, but I'm not going to go out of my way on, especially for an item like that, unless you're dealing with something mission critical. And then I'm wondering what the hell you're using a USB hub for to begin with. You just want to connect like 6 hard drives and run a website off of that. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up, but
it's amazing for $20.
Spend your money on other stuff that you really want, or save it. Save it up. Save it up for the party. Spend it on your friends.
At this point, I think I'm going to call it a show. Mr. Robert Heron, if you want to see the man, the myth, the legend, Monday, I believe it comes out, late Monday,
really?
HD Nation, the latest edition.
Oh, yeah.
You wax with joy and market context, and you get pretty excited about digital projection, the LED-powered projector, DLP projector you were talking about earlier. That's on HD Nation. Where else can we find the work of the wonderful Robert Heron?
Hey, HeronFidelity.com. I'm currently in the process of just gutting my website. So if you go there and you see strange things everywhere, just keep in mind that I'm working the back end on that thing like a madman right now. So I'm getting that. I got some new content coming too. I know I've been slacking off on that lately, but those 2 places are good places to find my stuff, get in touch with me, do whatever you need. Also, Twitter, Robert Heron. You can find me there, at Robert Heron.
Are you actually paying attention to that account now, or are you still kind of ignoring it at will?
I post things occasionally. I don't follow a lot of people, and I need to start following some folks a little bit more, pay more attention. But I occasionally do post things and put it out there just because I find an interesting link, I find some interesting info, and I'm surprised at how many people have stuck with me and just follow me despite my not exactly consistent posting. But I prefer to post infrequently, but quality. Keep the quality high, but I'm not just fire hosing people with what I had for lunch and what color are my socks that day. You're never going to hear that out of me.
I don't know. I might pay money to have you with a daily sock update.
My sock update. I'm going to put a webcam in my closet. There you go. You just look at my drawers.
Oh my goodness.
How did I get to this point? I don't know.
At this point, I'm officially afraid. I've just been invited to sneak into your house and look in your sock drawer.
Please.
I'm sure my wife would be thrilled to find out about. All right, I along with hosting HD Nation with Mr. Heron, Revision3.com/HD Nation, I get to do Techzilla every week with Veronica Belmont. This week's show just went up. We got a graphics card roundup with Lloyd Case, basically talking about the best graphics card from $200 to your budget is unlimited. We're talking about some new online music streaming. Roger Chang, our friend Roger Chang, reviews BlackBerry's first touchscreen phone, which is pretty interesting to watch him getting uptight and personal with that puppy. And also we've got a review of Toshiba's 3D gaming laptop, which is... we talk a little bit about WiMAX and who should be using it and why on this week's episode of Techzilla. Ryan Shrout, ladies and gentlemen, PCPer.com is his website. He's your regular host on This Week in Computer Hardware. Is at QuakeCon in Dallas, probably being pounced on by people with graphics card questions, memory questions, hardware questions. He will be back next Thursday, and I think he will probably have some interesting things to report. I also want to know if he actually saw Rage, the new Carmack game, the new id game running on the iPhone at 60 frames per second. That's going to be a fun one to see. Thanks so much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Heron, thank you so much for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this episode of This Week in Computer Hardware.